Hello, today's video is looking at Epitonidae, and I'll just scroll down, and I'm also including Janthina in this Janthinidae, because in my reading about Epitonium, that's now classed as a genus within the Epitoniums, which was a surprise to me, but I've included it here for that reason. All right, so let's have a look at the wentletraps as I know them, and then we'll look at the violet shells later on. All right, if I look at this, I'll show down here, there's quite a few local species there. In fact, altogether, I've counted 21 local species. By local, I mean in the Darwin area. 18 I've been able to name. There's 3 that I'm not sure about, so I've just got them as species. So as you can see, lots of very small ones there. And that's probably the most, there's a couple of containers of this one. This is Ducasinium. And I probably find at least one of those every time I go collecting. And there must be a few hundred in both of those plastic containers. Perhaps my favourite one from locally is this one. Very fine ribbing. And this one I am calling Auritum. Auritum. Lovely shell, that. And here's an interesting one that I haven't named. It's got the sculpture of a palisade, but it's much longer and thinner. So I wasn't quite sure what to name that. And some interesting ones here. I'll just pick a couple of other locals. That's an interesting one known as Tricoronata. And here's Acuminatum. Quite small specimens from Darwin, some nice different colours there, from white to dark brown. And that's the name I'm giving that one, Acuminator. Lots of others I could look at here. I'll look at one more locally, Martini, which I find quite rarely. There in 40 years, there's about 10 specimens. All right, so let's have a look at some other well-known. Let's have a look at the largest Epitonia. So Magnifica, of course, is, as far as I know, the largest species that is obtainable. I think there's one species at least that's larger than that, but it's only known from a couple of specimens. So that one's, to be exact, 107 millimeters. And my next largest one is this one here, which is Rugosum, and that is 92 millimeters. And my largest local shell is Coeneri. There's the usual size of Coeneri, but that large one absolutely stands out, and it is 82 millimeters. A beautiful shell, that. All right, and probably the most well-known of all of the Epitoniums is Scalerae. And of course they come out at very high prices. A century or so ago, and there's some famous forgeries of this shell that made out of things like rice paper. Amazing that people went to the trouble of doing that. But of course, a century or so ago, they weren't that well known because a few people collecting in the areas they can be found. Today, they're quite common shell. In fact, even in Darwin Harbour you can find shells of Scalerae. My largest one there is 60, sorry I'm looking at my notes, is 6.9 millimetres. They grow, I know they grow to over 6.9 centimetres of course, they grow to over 7 centimetres. The largest one I've seen is about 72 millimetres. That one there is 6. So quite a few, and there's some species that are very close, like Palissai, Neglectum, and there's a number of small ones that are also quite similar in shape and ribbing to Scalerae. Alright, I thought I'd look at a few unusual ones. So although you may not call them unusual, that particular one is known as Funiculata from the United States. Those are from California. This one here is Cochlea from Spain. I suppose they're unusual compared to the normal shell we get in Australia. Alright, Stataminatum from Panama is this one here. This is probably the most unusually shaped one I have, with the very wide ribbing there. And next to that, also from Panama, we have Gouldi. Lovely shell that. This one, similar, probably in the same genus as Gouldi, Irregulare. To put it upside down, gosh, it won't go in. All right, I'll just leave it there like that. This one from New Zealand, beautiful sculpture on that. Zelabori, probably New Zealand's most well-known Epitonium. A couple of other well-known Southern Australia ones, Australis and Granosum. There's the lovely Imperialis that I mentioned before. Beautiful ribbing on that. I've seen a shell in excess of 5 centimetres of that species. Magnificent. The largest one there is only about 2 centimetres. There's so many I can talk about here, but I'll have to mention Mitchellii and Ferminata. Mitchellii from Colombia, Ferminata, I think that's from Panama. Better double check, yes, from Panama. So there are also some nice well-known large ones. Yes, just so many I can talk about. I love this one here. I mentioned Accumulatum before. Brunia, and the nice large one. All right, so so many more I could talk about, but I'll go on and have a look at the Janthina. All right, in here we have, I think 7 different species, 5 of Janthina and 2 of Recluzia. I'll start with Recluzia. So there's one from my area. I've only come across them once and came across all 10 specimens at the same time, spread out over about 100-metre range on the tide line. And I'm calling that Lutea, although possibly Hargravisi might be more appropriate for the name. And then there's one from New Zealand, Rolandiana. And then there's 5 species that I've got here amongst the violet shells, the Janthinas. So this is the one we get regularly, fairly regularly up here in northern Australia. That is globosa. And perhaps the most common one is Janthina. I've come across those literally by the thousands during stormy weather on holidays down south during Christmas holidays. Huge numbers. And then at other times, other species only find a couple at a time. So there's also Pellicula, Exigua, and Umbilicata amongst those as well. And I'll point out that beautiful one from Port Hedland. Beautiful colours in that shell, and they haven't faded. It's at least 6 years old. A standout. All right, thank you. I hope you enjoyed that quick look at Epitonidae.